Alright folks, it is time once again to choose the next community submitted creature, this time for Valguero. It's been about 18 months since the last vote took place, and people have certainly been using that time to think up some interesting and very detailed ideas. As always with these, it is important to note that the vote is intended to be simply about the creature itself, not the archified ideas present in the designs. There is no guarantee that any of it will be carried through by wildcard, but that being said, the vast bulk have so far stayed pretty close to their submissions, so certainly still worth us having a look. A lot of these ideas are quite extensive, a sort of case of throwing everything they can think of at the wall and seeing what sticks in the end result, but there's no denying that a lot of effort has gone into these creature creations either way. If this video does help you out, I hope you'll consider supporting the channel, as it does all help me out. But without further waffling, let's get into our 10 Valguero finalists. Starting with a heavily redesigned but familiar face, the Acinonyx, or prehistoric cheetah. This new version of the big cat has a few basic abilities at its disposal, focused slightly more on combat than mobility this time, with drift turns that create blinding dust clouds, an evasive stance that automatically dodges the next incoming attack after activation, and the capability even for some short wall running. Now these on their own of course paint it still as a bit of a travel mount, but after running for long enough you now charge a new Blitz bar, one of the core parts of the new design, which grants each of those abilities an additional effect once filled. The wall runs gain a chainable jump to scale to new heights. Both regular attacks and the drift dust cloud will now inflict a status effect called Vertigo, which causes its victims to wobble awkwardly and take increased torpor, as well as not triggering the evasive stance's normally hefty cooldown when it dodges an attack. Further round out our cheetah, we have a few saddle attachments that boost its utility, with a lasso launcher, a tranquilizer turret, a dynamo battery charger, or even a personal parachute, with taming achieved by earning its trust, then harvesting prime while riding, with each piece gathered raising the affinity. Our second entry is the Aerotitan, a massive Asdarkid and potential terror of both ground and sky. Not quite as large as its cousin the Quetzal, it is however far more dangerous, able to haul anything up to the size of a rhino into the air with a leap that leaves blinding dust behind, before slamming it down to the floor at high speeds for massive damage, both to its cargo and anything caught nearby in the blast. While in flight, an aerial spin will leave low pressure air hoops that boost the speed of following allies, and its wings can be slapped together to send opponents hurtling away. Even grounded, it still demands some respect, being able to sit in a sort of sentry mode over taming creatures to drive away opportunistic predators. Further still, pushing on our fear theme, we have a coffin bed for a saddle, and a terror-inducing set of markings on its underwing that inflict an effect called Bad Omen, causing creatures to de-aggro, blinding players, and giving it a sort of tracking mark so that it can follow wilds. Despite its terror tendencies though, it is actually relatively simple to tame it seems, merely requiring a shield to deflect some of its wing slaps back at it, forcing it to the ground for a passive feed. Challenging the Aero for dominance of the air is our third creature, the frost-focused flyer, the Cryodrakon. Providing insulation to riders and an icy chill to opponents, the Cryo seems to be a sort of, well, a bit of a mix of a Fenrir and Finalists of the air perhaps. In addition to being able to coat itself in ice for extra armour and some damage reflection, its big show-stopping move is creating a vast, chilling vortex that slows and freezes targets that get within its radius. Similarly again to the Fenrir, it also acts as a mobile refrigerator, storing all manner of foods, including even wyvern milk, for extended periods of time. Its taming is of course quite different to either of those creatures though. It involves using the Freya curry to mask your body heat, confusing the cryo to try and sort of shoo you away until it tires itself out, and you can approach and give it a feeding of fish cakes, a new item that, aside from being its favourite food, also acts as a sort of veggie cake for piscivores. This is a design that I suspect has probably had a few tweaks since its initial posting, as in addition to these abilities there are brief one-off mentions of ice breath, nesting and also a mobile cryo fridge, but none of them are further elaborated on, so I assume just remnants of an older concept that were later removed. Next up we have the Pentaceratops, a sort of mid-late game Megatrike siege beast. Along with a taunt, heavy attack and the charge of the smaller trike relative, the Pentaceratops also has a defense boost when in groups of 3 or more and access to a few cooperative stances. The first is referred to as a marching wall, where a team of Pentas lock together side by side, further reducing their incoming damage and allowing them to strafe and rotate as a single unit. Switching to bulwark stance will cause the wall members to hunker down on the spot, becoming immobile, shielding anything behind them and causing incoming damage to charge up their final stance of battering ram, during which all members of the wall charge forwards with greatly boosted damage and an additional structural destruction on top. 2 saddles are presented for this, with the first being mid-game, very basic, and the second being a late-game heavily armoured saddle, providing a complete immunity to frontal damage and knockback, but at the cost of reducing its own movement speed. Next up we have the Desmatosuchus, a large spiked lizard which, while looking relatively like an ankylosaur, is in truth closer to a crocodile. The title of Gourmand is given when it is quite appropriate for this design, as it really does dip its fingers into quite a few pies. First, we have a bit of taming utility with a buff that causes 15% faster food drain and reduced effectiveness loss on nearby taming creatures. A small bit of base utility comes in the form of digging dirt mounds to serve as natural crop plots, while a 35% damage reduction lets it serve as a soaker when you're short on stegos. It even throws in some ranged capability courtesy of 2 additional saddles, with a multi-missile launcher that seeks airborne targets in the mid-late game, and a tech railgun variant unlocked from beating the map's bosses. Finally, with a bit of an extra wink towards its foodie theme, its taming involves first honey to lure it from its wild burrowed state, and then a passive feeding of rarer food items, in similar manner to the ever-picky Moschops. Our 6th entry is the Megaraptor, a creature with a truly mega list of features and aimed to be terrifying ambush predator. A rare spawn across the entire map, Megaraptors stalk their prey, near invisible and immune to turret and creature detection, before pouncing from ambush to induce fear in creatures and ghastly hallucinations in survivors. Wild Megaraptors are completely immune to all player-based weapons, be they blade or projectile, with the only exception being fire, and will cause it to flee uncontrollably. If you do manage to successfully resist and bring one down, its claws can be harvested to create a special chain knife weapon, giving rapid attacks, grappling hook function, a spin that deflects projectiles, and, most importantly, the ability to parry the Megaraptor's strikes. It is through this parrying motion that the Megaraptor is to be tamed, gradually draining its stamina so you can feed it Shadow Steak or Battle Tartar. Once acquired, you will have a powerful monster at your command, with attacks that ramp up in speed and fill a power gauge to inflict damage boost and trackable blood trail. Its powerful claws can be used to pin small targets like a Thyla, or latch onto larger ones like a Deinonychus. Directional dodging and the capability to heal from large opponents help it to stay in the fight, inflicting further damage, but should its killing frenzy get too far, it'll enter a risky rage mode, which, while heavily buffing it for the duration, does render it uncontrollable. From big to small, we have the rare shoulder pet entry of the Coelophysis. Several ideas are suggested for this little critter, each filling different roles. The first few aim towards a stealthy assassin, with the survivor using literal remote control to slip by turrets and defences to scout or attack players, wrapping itself around their shoulders for maximum damage. The second role is more of a companion, Described as a dueling pet, survivors would gain a whistle item to issue a set of commands on foes, such as lunge attacks, dodges, or grappling. The third set of tools aims more for the base quality of life, consuming element and passively produce stem cells to boost nearby mutation rates and provide unique glowing colour regions to nearby creatures. And then finally, as a fourth suggestion, we have a sort of natural protector, bringing a gas mask effect and resistance to toxins such as Nidaria, Arthroplurospit or Aranio webs, as well as small heal burst whenever the player needs a top-up. Worth noting, the author does not intend all of these ideas to be employed on a single tame, but simply that they had so many potential thoughts for this creature that they thought they'd leave it to Wildcard to decide between them. For number 8, we have the Phobaeticus ligneapilis, or more simply, the giant stick insect. Much more of a utility tame than anything else it seems, this giant insect is extremely dedicated to its pretense of being a tree. When a player manages to locate this wooden golem of sorts, they will need to first throw honey on the ground, and then turn and look away before it will break its disguise, and they can give a quick veggie cake feed while it's distracted. Once your timber tame has been acquired, you can further enhance its disguises by attaching beehives to provide personal defense, or perch Archaeopteryx on its branches to boost its passive sap generation and heal nearby insectoids. Able to be scraped occasionally for woody chitin, or set to sea as a pseudo-raft in a pinch, this colossal insect really does take its job of living life as a log to the extreme. Next up, we have another ceratopsian, the Xenoceratops thunderus. Through either perfectly timed parries from its damage-resistant frill, taking shots to the front, or simply running at top speed for extended periods, the Xenoceratops will charge up an electrical field between its horns. Once at sufficient level, this static can be unleashed in one of 3 ways. A frontal AoE slam that deals heavy knockback damage and forces players to dismount. A roar that regenerates nearby herbivores, reducing incoming damage and cleansing negative effects. Or finally, fire a large plasma ball forwards, leaving an electrical storm where it impacts that stuns and damages anything entering its area. Beyond this series of electrical discharges, it can also be placed into a bracing stance to give resistance to knockback and dismounts, or if you're feeling a bit more passive, parked at base to charge generators in a similar manner to the Pyromane's Flame Aura. Taming is a bit riskier than some of the other suggestions here, and achieved by issuing it with a challenge, during which you'll have to try and inflict torpor through a series of lance joust shield blocks or bursting its plasma attacks at range, with the quite heavy risk that should you fail one of these actions, the torpor will instead be inflicted back to you. Of course, the big question I have is, what abilities are going to be left for the inevitable Electromane when that turns up? And now, for our 10th and final entry, we have the neck with legs, the Tanystropheus. Despite looking more like a portable reptilian Tyrak, the Tanystropheus actually employs its long neck to give it purpose as a biological sniper. Climbing walls to sneaky spots and using a saddle with built-in sniper scope and ghillie net, the Tanny delivers long-range shots to unsuspecting targets. With various ammunitions such as a poison-damaging biotoxin round, armor-piercing chitin pellets, tracking ammonite bile, or just the standard slowing and flyer-grounding shot, there's several options for how to pick holes in your opponent. Living in coastal regions, it's also learnt to become quite adept at fishing, and can be tasked to use that built-in pole to automatically do it for you, giving you all the benefits and none of the angler tedium. Again, for taming, we lean further into that sniper role, with affinity being gained by players using a long neck or sniper rifle to assist the Tanny in shooting down those irritating ichthyornis that we all so love to hate. And with that, we have our top 10. One of the more varied votes we've seen, I think, with herbivores, carnivores, flyers, climbers, a rare shoulder pet, and even a living tree. But which would you like to see on Valguero? Let me know in the comments, and do not forget to vote. Remember that every position matters and not just what you put in first place, with your vote being counted for the next in line should your top choice be eliminated. But at that, thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been helpful, and I will see you in a week's time to discuss the results. Bye bye.